The Beatles? Yeah, I've met the Beatles. I was in high school when I met those hippies. In fact, I was fortunate enough to play with them when they visited my high school. Of course, that was back in the old days, the turbulent days. Released in the summer of 1967, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is regarded as the most famous and greatest album of all time. Voted exactly that by Rolling Stones magazine and becoming the very first rock and roll album to win Album of the Year at the Grammys. Sgt. Pepper's is one of the best-selling albums of all time, with 32 million copies sold worldwide. It took a total of 129 days to record the album, over 200 hours of commitment. These guys weren't just recording songs, they were inventing. Troves of fans were inspired and ready to hear what the Fab Four would cook up next. At the climax of the swinging 60s, the Beatles were icons. Member Paul McCartney said it best. The Beatles weren't the leaders of the generation, but the spokesmen. Caught up in the free-spirited lifestyle of the 60s, the Beatles wanted to mirror the world around them by focusing on the peace and love movement of 1967. This became known as the Summer of Love. With this wave of creativity, the Beatles wanted more. After years of tour, the boys were fed up with the Beatles' image. McCartney put it that they really hated that fucking four little mop-top boys approach. In fact, the squad felt that they were men, not boys, and artists rather than musicians. By 1966, the Beatles felt concerts had nothing to do with music anymore. According to member John Lennon, the musicians could be replaced by waxworks and the crowd would be just as happy. Sgt. Pepper was the album that signaled the withdrawal from immediacy and spontaneousness of the live performance and the desire to communicate with the audience from the recording studio. This was coupled with a new feature including lyrics of the songs in the album. This was the first time listeners could actually see the words the audience was meant to hear. Toward the end of 1966, Paul McCartney had the idea of creating an entire album performed by a fictional band, Sgt. Pepper's Band. This alter ego would give the Beatles the freedom to experiment musically. Even the clothes they wore invoked shock and curiosity. This image of the Beatles wasn't an invention of something new. Rather, they invented an attitude of the new and the old simultaneously. The Beatles became characterized as carnivalistic, if you will, meaning anything goes. Barriers were broken down, social status, political status, sacred status, all became non-existent. A new mode of interrelationships was created between people. This movement cut across lines of class and race and divided society by age. By this time, white teenagers responded positively to the rhythms of black music, and a nationwide exposure challenged the authority of adults' segregated society. Through music, the hierarchy of white and black became leveled. The album's theme started to look skeptically at the world, and McCartney noted that history was becoming distorted. This music was about creating their own narrative and choosing their own heroes and reinventing history themselves. The Beatles were one piece of the puzzle in response to the social upheaval that was shaking Great Britain and America at the time. The album visits the cruelty and abuse aimed at women, the controversy of recreational drug use, and the chill of the atomic annihilation as the album's end makes you think of nuclear explosion. The Beatles were notorious for toppling established hierarchies. Most notably was John Lennon's remarks of Christianity and the Beatles' success was more popular than Jesus. The song She's Leaving Home focuses on the friction between parent and child as something inside that was always denied for so many years. After the age of Nazism and the burdens of the bomb, there was an exclamation of joy and what it was to be alive. What makes the Beatles seem timeless is their ability to be honest. It is the music of all the people. Above all, the Beatles dabbled with all types of music. They continually reinvented their own music by injecting it with fresh influences from multiple beliefs and values. While the Beatles may seem like no-good hippies to some, the Fab Four redefined music and the communication between class and culture alike. Thank you very much for watching. You have a great rest of your day.